Greetings, humans, and welcome back. I'm Joey Pigtails, and in episode 19, I'm going to be going over a couple of hands I played at the WSOP. One from the Bomb Pot events, and one from the Gladiator, and a Bomb Pot hand from the cash games. I don't have footage of the first two, so the background will be scenes from my trip. After the hands, I'm going to be talking about some new and exciting things happening for me, and my plans for the immediate future, so stick around afterwards. But let's go ahead and get into the hands. The first hand I want to discuss comes from the $1,500 double board bomb pot event at the WSOP. This is a no-limit hold'em double board bomb pot hand where everyone antes one big blind. The stack sizes are irrelevant as the action is relatively simple, but what I really want to focus on here is the concept of hand strength and board reading in this format, as well as understanding the differences in being heads up and having multi-way action. I'm in the hijack this hand with about 40 big blinds, and I look down at ace-king offsuit. We see flops of queen-jack-6 rainbow on top and ace-3-4 rainbow on the bottom. As you can see, we flopped a gut shot on top and top-top on the bottom. At face value, we seem to have a strong hand here on one board, but in this format, on somewhat coordinated boards, one pair is usually not going to win a board if there is a lot of multi-way action. Now, the good news is that the first 5 players checked to me, so I look left to see if I could identify any non-verbal tells from the other 2 players. And sure enough, the guy on the button, who just recently lost a big hand and is sitting on about 9 big blinds, looks froggy. I check, the cutoff checks, and the button immediately jams. It's folded around to me, and the guy on my left looks uninterested, so I start thinking more about my hand strength versus a value hand. Let's break this down. I have top-top on the bottom board. Now, if my opponent is ahead of me on this board, say he has something like a flop straight with 2-5 or a 2-pair combo like ace-4 or 3-4, then what does that say about the other board? It means I'm ahead there. Not only that, but I'm light years ahead and our opponent is drawing to 6 outs at best on that board. If our opponent has some sort of hand that interacts with the top board, like some sort of queen or anything that touches the top board at all, then I am light years ahead on the bottom board and drawing to the nuts on top and potentially a better 1-pair hand there. Essentially, I should be a considerable equity favorite in this hand heads up versus almost any 2 cards. I go ahead and make the call, and our opponent flips over 2-pair, 3-4 on the bottom board. My opponent fails to improve on the top board run out, but I do improve on the turn on the bottom board hitting a king, and I end up scooping this pot. A quick note before we move on, all of that theory really only applies if we have heads-up action on the flop. The dynamics change significantly if there are 3 or more players continuing, where we can be behind on both boards and get stacked, so we must be cognizant that 1-pair hands aren't super strong multi-way, even top-top, and that having equity on both boards is still important like it is in PLO double board bomb pots. The next hand is from the Gladiator, and I'm going to use round numbers for the stacks and blinds for this hand to make it easier to explain. Blinds are 501k, and I have 100 big blinds. I've played a couple of monster hands recently that have been shown down, one from out of position that I took a check-call lead line and got paid, as well as a triple barrel hand in position when I flopped trips. Our villain is in the small blind and has us covered with around 110 big blinds. He's been playing relatively straightforward and has won a couple really big hands in the last orbit, but has been getting active and I'm wondering if he's getting out of line. He did, however, give me a walk a couple of orbits ago, so consider that as we move forward in the hand. It's somehow folded around to this player in the small blind who completes, and I check back 9-10 offsuit. Our flop comes out king 10-7 rainbow, and our opponent now leads for 2 big blinds. Sure, he can limp a few kings, but I would have expected decent hands with a king to raise pre-flop. Regardless, I have a pair and backdoors, so I call to evaluate. The turn is the Jack of Clubs. It's a really interesting card, and then I now have a double gutter to go with my pair, and unless our opponent is limping all of their value range with hands like King Jack, Queen 9, 8-9, Ace Queen, King 10, etc., this should be an absolutely scary card for him. Now, this is where things get off the rails. Our opponent now checks the turn. I have a decent amount of equity here, and I want to be able to take fold equity as well as build a pot to barrel the river if he decides to continue here. I settle on a bet of 6k, almost full pot. Now, our opponent goes into the tank for a little bit, probably about 20 seconds, and then he cuts out a raise to 24 big blinds and sticks it out there. What the hell just happened? We talked about the kinds of strong value hands this guy can have if he is limping most of his range and not raising pre-flop from the small blind, but he's played pretty ABC up to this point, so he has to have something strong here. But what exactly? We know he's strong. His line is screaming strength, but I get the impression his sizing would be smaller if he was nutted here. As I'm leaning further and further toward folding and just moving on with a healthy stack, I consider my actual equity in the hand, how I can improve to what may be the best hand on the river. You know, 2-pair combos, strips, those queens and eights that all make straights. So most of that should be good if we hit it, right? And if we just jam this massive stack into our opponent's face right here, he's going to fold out everything but nutted hands, right? Right? I pondered these questions for about 20 seconds before I mustered every ounce of courage I could find, and I stuffed my stack in the middle, hoping for a fold. Our opponent is now visibly shaken at my action, starting to shake his head and talk about hands. He finally says that I could have 8-9 here, but he's not good enough to fold, so he calls. Can you guess what he had? I'll tell you, but first, hit that like button for me and help me get monetized. It just takes a second. So, our opponent rolls over King 7 offsuit for a flop top and bottom pair, and we're now drawing to a Queen, 10, or an 8. The river's a 4, and we go from having 100 big blinds and a shot at going deep to punting a huge stack and looking for the next game. Looking back on my performance this summer at the WSOP, I ended up being my own worst enemy a lot of the times, as most events ended up like this one you just saw, where I played and ran relatively well, built up a stack, and then allowed myself to get tilted over some small hands and then go for this kind of bluff line. I thought a lot about those specific decisions in my mindset, not to, so much to lament the results, but to better understand why I did what I did. Was it ego? Was I trying to be a bully? Did I fail to keep my confidence from becoming overconfidence and just let strategy considerations fall to the wayside? Was this a part of the strategy where I'm utilizing my stack and position and image to try and set myself up for success? Or was this an implosion where I could have simply checked the turn back and folded to a river lead and moved on with a healthy stack and an intact image? A lot of people I've talked with have said that my line here was ingenious, that even a hand that is as strong as the one that called usually folds in this spot to this line. But there are a few tidbits of feedback that I've only heard from a couple of people that have helped me to put this in perspective. While the line I took was pretty friggin' sweet, it wasn't the right time or player to try it on. More specifically, this is a $300 buy-in tournament. Most people didn't buy into this event to fold when they are putting a bunch of chips in the pot, especially at the earlier levels. And considering player type, most pros avoid this event, so while this player was obviously studied, he probably isn't a pro. If this were day 2 and pretty far in the money where ICM considerations are on everyone's mind, then this kind of line might work like we saw with that crazy 5-bet bluff at the WSOP final table earlier this year. So when we put all those things together, what does it tell us? This was a punt. I took a line that wasn't appropriate, and I suffer the consequences. Learn from my mistakes here, humans. There are times to take bluff lines. Just make sure that you're considering the big picture and not getting sucked into the minutia of the moment. Before I jump into the bomb pot hand, I wanted to mention that I've recently joined PLO Professor and Dogfish Poker as an agent of the Madhouse Poker Club. We play 4, 5, and 6-card PLO and high-low during the evenings on PP Poker, and sometimes some bomb pot only games. If you're interested in playing with us, we have a promo. Order a Madhouse hoodie for $50 and get 100 in chips. To learn more, hit me up on Twitter. So this is our bomb pot hand from the 1-2-5 game in Paris to cover the time rake. A little background here. The game has been a typical low-stakes PLO game where most hands go 5 or 6 ways to a flop, and betting gets wonky after the flop, and we usually see a showdown. I'm on the button and look down at a pretty hand, Ace-Jack 10-10 with nut spades. With flops of 10-7-6-2 clubs and 6-8-king-2 diamonds, I flopped top set on a straighty flushy board on top and not much else on the bottom. Blockers to the draws and nuts exist on the opposite boards. For example, there's an 8 on bottom blocking the straight on top and a club on bottom blocking the top board flush draw. Seeing so many cards on these double board games means we have a huge amount of info, so use it wisely. It's checked around to me, and while I should have the nuts at the top right now, as we expect that straight to bet it, I don't want to bloat this pot yet and check it back. The turns are the 3 of spades on top and the 2 of hearts on bottom. Not really ideal for my hand, as 4-5 now makes a straight on that board, and we're still 8 ways. It's checked around in middle position, who bets 45, and 2 of us end up coming along. The rivers are the 3 of clubs on top and the 2 of diamonds on the bottom. There we go, baby. It's checked in middle position again, who asks how much is in the pot. Here's 260, and then bets 125. The last thing I want to do is scare away the third player here, so I don't consider raising. In fact, prior to recording this, I was firmly against even thinking about raising here. But maybe I should consider jamming, especially looking at the other guy's stack, the short guy on the left. Instead, my thought process was getting the other guy to call so I can chop his 125 bucks, which I do, and he does. My boat is good for half the pot on top, and the middle position player has 10 high diamonds on bottom for a flush to take that board. He had a lower boat on my board, so that was actually the case 10. So, while my trip to Vegas was a bust overall on the monetary win-loss column, I do look at this trip as an overall win. I reconnected with some friends in the poker world, strengthened a lot of relationships, met scores of new and interesting people, including poker celebrities like Joey Ingram and Dan Juggleman Cates, and came back from this trip optimistic about the future for a number of reasons. I can't divulge details as of yet, since things are still in the works, but I want to point you all towards a really cool community called rec.poker. From multiple podcasts each week to study groups to the Discord forums to one-on-one coaching, these cool humans are building a tight-knit community designed around the concept of learning and growing together with genuine people who want to see each other succeed. I've been interacting with this community for a couple of weeks now, and everything I've seen has been positive. And rumor has it that they are wanting to expand their offerings a bit more into PLO and other mixed games. Do you happen to know anyone who might be a good fit for that role? If you do, make sure to hit that like button and let me know who in the comments. And maybe even jump onto the rec.poker website and make a free account. That would be pretty sweet. And when you join their Discord, make sure to tell them Joey Pigtails sent you. Another cool thing in the works is that I met with the powers that be at Orange City Racing and Card Club. This also isn't official, but it's looking highly likely that I'll be commentating on some streams when they open their expansion in the middle of August. And there may even be a larger role for me leading up to this and beyond. I know a lot of you are watching my vlogs are in and around Central Florida, so if you think I'm the right fit for these roles, make sure to let the floors at Orange City and Daytona know it every time you see them. Let them know you'll want to see Joey Pigtails hosting the best game in the room. That's going to wrap it up for Vlog 19. I'm planning on recording in Orange City again sometime this week, doing a $100 to $2K challenge, and look to increase the goals as they are met for each session. So if you want to see how that shakes out in real time, look for me at Orange City later this week. Remember, humans, one interaction truly can change a life. I want to thank you all, everybody that I met in Vegas on this trip, for sharing your positive energy and vibes. It means the world to me to hear that you enjoy and support my vlog and my message, and I have come back home more motivated and inspired than ever to do some really great things. Thanks for stopping by and sharing some time with me. I'm Joey Pigtails, and I am transparent, reminding you to always, always be a good human. Bye.